Andrew Collins was one of the most talked about names on major financial magazines, both at home and abroad. As the founder and CEO of Collins Group, a global business empire, he was known as a steel man, ruthless in the world of commerce. With a sharp mind and unwavering determination, Andrew had turned nothing into a fortune, earning the admiration of many. But behind the cold exterior, behind the billions listed on business charts, he carried in his heart a deep and endless love and a constant worry for his young son, Lucas. Lucas was a sweet 10-year-old boy with eyes as clear as an autumn sky and a gentle smile that could melt even the hardest hearts. But from the moment he was born, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, a condition that made movement difficult, speech broken, and required near constant care. Andrew could buy anything, from private jets and mountain villas to the best doctors in the world. But he couldn't buy the one thing Lucas truly needed: genuine love and human connection. He had hired dozens of nannies, therapists, and private nurses. Though many of them were devoted professionals, at the end of the day, they were just employees. None of them truly saw Lucas as a child in need of love, only as a duty to be fulfilled. One chilly autumn afternoon, as the trees along the street began dressing themselves in golden hues, Andrew decided to take Lucas out for a meal. Usually he would choose a high-end, discreet restaurant, places where few would pay attention to the two of them. But today, Lucas pleaded with him, "Daddy, can we go somewhere small and cozy, like in the movies?" And so Andrew, the man who was used to $10,000 wine and Italian leather chairs, drove to a little family diner on the outskirts of the city. It was old, simple, and a bit worn down, but it had a warm and familiar charm. What Andrew didn't know was that in that humble corner of a busy world, a fateful meeting awaited, one that would change his life and the life of the kindest woman he would ever meet. As the creaky wooden door of the small diner swung open, a wave of warmth swept away the early autumn chill from the street outside. The space was simple, touched by time, from the faded pictures on the walls to the comforting scent of pancakes and freshly brewed coffee. This wasn't a place for the rich and powerful. It was a haven for souls seeking a little peace amid the chaos of life. Andrew chose a table by the window for Lucas, where the soft glow of the late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves and danced across the checkered tablecloth. Lucas looked around, wide-eyed and full of wonder. Meanwhile, Andrew, as usual, was glued to his phone, handling a high-stakes call about shareholder equity in a major deal. That's when she walked over, a young waitress named Emma Taylor, likely in her mid-20s. Petite frame, warm brown eyes, and a smile as gentle as twilight. But Emma didn't just bring a menu. She brought something no one else in that room could offer: genuine, compassionate presence. As she bent down to greet them, she immediately noticed the boy with trembling hands struggling to pierce a piece of pancake, only for it to fall back onto his plate again and again. Each time Lucas sighed quietly, his eyes lowering in disappointment. No one seemed to notice, except Emma. She paused for a moment, maybe out of hesitation, or maybe out of deep respect, before gently kneeling beside the table, meeting Lucas eye to eye. "Would you like a little help with that?" she asked, her voice soft as a breeze but warm like a rare beam of sunlight in winter. Lucas looked up, confused at first, but his expression quickly lit up. "Yes, please. Thank you." With quiet patience, Emma cut his pancake into bite-sized pieces and carefully fed him, one spoonful at a time. There was no hint of pity in her face, no sign of obligation, just kindness. As she worked, she chatted softly, telling Lucas about the stray cat behind the kitchen, the golden leaves falling outside, and the sweet pastries she loved as a kid. Lucas laughed, not the polite kind of laugh adults hope for, but the pure, joyful laugh of a child who was being seen and treated like any other kid. From across the table, Andrew looked up as he ended his call and froze. In 10 years of being a father, he had watched countless people approach Lucas, nannies, nurses, therapists, because it was their job, their duty, or because he paid them well. But this was different. Emma didn't just see a disabled child struggling to eat. She saw a little boy who needed someone to truly be there for him, and she met that need with her whole heart. For Andrew, time seemed to stand still in that moment. In the fast-paced world he lived in, where every second was calculated and every move had a price. This might have been the first time in years he realized something more valuable than billion-dollar deals. Kindness. Simple, quiet, and priceless. Andrew Collins was not a man easily moved. In the business world, he was known for keeping a cool head and a heart of steel. He had mastered the art of hiding emotions behind a calm gaze and a firm voice. But that afternoon, in the quiet corner of a humble diner, something inside him shifted, gently but profoundly. He watched Emma the way one might observe life through a window, separated, distant from a world he hadn't touched in years, a world of real, unfiltered emotion. The way she leaned in toward his son, the way her eyes followed Lucas's every movement, every soft-spoken word that brought laughter to his child's lips. It struck Andrew with a quiet but painful realization. How long had it been since Lucas laughed like that? Since Lucas's mother died in a tragic accident, Andrew had buried himself in work, believing that providing material comfort was enough. He hired the best caregivers, therapists, and planned every hour of Lucas's life around treatment schedules. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten the one thing his son needed most wasn't the best services. It was presence. It was the warmth of someone who truly, deeply cared. He now saw Lucas chattering away, telling Emma about his favorite toy car, a cartoon he just watched, and even his dream of becoming an animal illustrator. Lucas had never opened up like this to anyone, not because he didn't want to, but because no one had ever been patient enough to sit, stay, and truly listen. When Emma stepped away to serve another table, Andrew turned to his son. His voice was low, almost hoarse, like a man cracking through the shell he'd lived in for far too long. "Do you like her?" Lucas smiled and nodded, simple and sincere. "Yeah, she's really nice. Not like the others." Andrew said nothing more, but inside him something was stirring, like water flowing beneath a layer of ice, slowly shifting, reshaping. In that quiet, ordinary moment, he felt something soften in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known in a very long time. He was a powerful man, a billionaire, a father, but also a man who had lost his way. And now, unexpectedly, it was a simple waitress with a kind and gentle heart who had begun to unlock that long-closed door. That evening, after the diner had closed and the warm yellow lights were gradually turned off one by one, Emma took off her apron and made her way down the street to a small apartment at the end of the block. The autumn night was colder than usual, and sharp gusts of wind pierced through her thin coat. But Emma barely noticed. She had long grown used to going without. The apartment she shared with her mother was on the third floor of an old rundown building. No elevator, no heating, just creaky wooden stairs that groaned with every step. She opened the door carefully, trying not to make too much noise. Inside, her mother, Linda, lay curled up on an old sofa, a blanket pulled up to her chest. Her eyes, though tired, lit up with warmth the moment she saw her daughter walk in. "Was the night shift hard, sweetheart?" her mother asked, her voice weak but full of love. Emma smiled and gently brushed a hand through her mother's hair. "It wasn't bad. I met a really sweet little boy today. He reminded me why I keep pushing forward every day." But Emma didn't mention the harder parts, the medical bill that had come in that morning, or the fact that she skipped lunch just to save a little more money for her mom's medication. She kept those worries hidden behind her smile, so her mother wouldn't have to carry even one more ounce of concern. Every day, Emma juggled 2 jobs, mornings at a bakery, evenings at the diner. There was no time for dreams, no time for youthful hobbies. And sometimes, in rare quiet moments, she'd find herself wondering, am I even going in the right direction? But all it took was one glance at her mother, still here, still able to talk, still able to smile. And Emma would remember, she didn't need another path. This was the only one that mattered. She walked into the tiny kitchen, warmed up the last of yesterday's soup, poured it into 2 chipped bowls, and sat beside her mom for a simple dinner. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't enough, but it was filled with quiet love and sacrifice. Outside the window, the streets were silent. Dim yellow lights spilled over the rain-soaked pavement, like blurred strokes of memory. No one could have guessed that the young waitress with the gentle smile that afternoon was the same girl now quietly fighting, day after day, for the one she loved most, without ever asking for anything in return. The next morning, as the pale sunlight filtered through dusty glass windows, Emma quickly tied her hair, slipped into her simple uniform, and headed to the diner like she did every day. She was used to starting her mornings with the soft jingle of the front door and the faint aroma of coffee in the air. But today, something felt different. As soon as she stepped inside, her manager, a woman known for her stern voice but kind eyes, hurried over with a look that mixed nervousness and surprise. "Emma, someone's here to see you. Outside." He said his name is Andrew Collins. That name made Emma pause for a second. Andrew Collins, yesterday's customer. The polished man who came in with the little boy whose eyes were as clear as an autumn lake. Why had he come back? Emma stepped toward the door, her hands unconsciously wringing together, and there he was, tall and familiar, waiting on the front porch. He wore the same charcoal overcoat, but today his eyes weren't cold like before. There was warmth in them now, sincerity, and perhaps a trace of hesitation. "Hello, Emma," he said, his voice low and gentle, as if trying not to make things awkward. "I came to say thank you." Emma blinked in mild surprise but nodded politely. "You really didn't have to go out of your way, sir." Andrew offered a soft smile and shook his head. "No, I did. What you did for Lucas, none of us ever have. Not like that." He paused for a moment, then, as if already having rehearsed it, he held out a small handwritten card. "Tonight I'd like to invite you to dinner. Just something simple, nothing formal. Lucas would really love to see you again." Emma looked down at the card, then up at him. A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. She thought about her evening shift, the meager paycheck that kept her and her mother afloat, and the pile of unpaid medical bills sitting on her desk. I'm truly honored, but I have a shift tonight." Andrew fell silent for a second, then spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. "What if I paid you 3 times what you'd earned during that shift?" Emma looked up, startled. Her eyes widened. She wasn't used to offers like this, nor to receiving kindness from strangers without strings attached. I don't even know what to say." "Just say yes," he said with a quiet smile. Not the smile of a businessman used to getting what he wanted, but the smile of a father, genuinely grateful that someone had brought joy to his child's heart. Emma gave a small, tentative nod. "Okay, I'll come." And as he turned and walked toward the waiting luxury car, Emma remained on the porch, the invitation still in her hand, her heart quietly stirring with emotions she hadn't felt in a long time. Something unfamiliar was blooming inside her, a fragile flicker of hope, the kind she thought she'd never feel again. The taxi pulled up in front of an elegant villa nestled behind a row of maple trees, their leaves just beginning to turn. Emma stepped out, clutching her worn-out handbag and a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked by the roadside, the only gift she could afford to bring. She stood at the gate for a long moment, feeling as though she had stepped into another world, one too polished, too quiet, and far too distant from her reality. The light blue dress she wore, purchased from a thrift store 2 years ago, suddenly felt out of place among the splendor of the home before her. The door opened. Standing there was none other than Lucas, the boy with the sunshine smile she couldn't forget. His face lit up the moment he saw her, his eyes sparkling like he was reuniting with a long-lost friend. "Miss Emma, you really came," Emma laughed, kneeling down to hand him the bouquet. "I promised, didn't I?" Lucas carefully took the flowers, cradling them like a precious treasure. Moments later, Andrew appeared in the doorway, a gentle smile softening his features. "Come in, please. Lucas hasn't stopped talking about you all day." Emma stepped inside with quiet hesitation. The interior surprised her. It was warm, modestly decorated, nothing like the cold, extravagant space she had imagined a billionaire would live in. A piano sat in one corner, a few landscape paintings lined the hallway, and in the middle of it all was something unexpected. a sense of belonging, as if she wasn't a guest, but someone who had been missed. Dinner was already set on the table, steaming lasagna, buttery garlic bread, a fresh salad, and a small apple pie. Lucas whispered that, "Dad ordered it just for you because you said you liked apples." Throughout the meal, laughter filled the room. Lucas told silly stories about school and about the neighbor's dog who barked every night. Emma listened patiently, responding with soft encouragements and the occasional playful joke that sent the boy into bursts of giggles. Andrew stayed mostly quiet, simply watching. But it wasn't the look of a man observing, it was the look of a father soaking in a rare, precious moment, watching his son genuinely happy. After dinner, the three stepped into the garden. Paper lanterns hung from tree branches, casting a gentle glow across the crisp autumn night. Lucas sat between them, leaning his head on Emma's shoulder, eyes fluttering shut. Andrew turned to her, his voice low and sincere. "I haven't seen him laugh like this since his mother passed." Emma looked up and met his gaze. There was pain in his eyes, but also gratitude and trust. "Lucas is a remarkable boy," she whispered, "and you're a remarkable father." That night, when Emma returned to her small apartment, she brought nothing with her but the memory of that evening and a handwritten note that had replaced the bouquet of wildflowers. "Thank you for bringing warmth back into our world." She placed it beside her old bedside lamp and stared at the words for a long while. She wasn't sure why, but for the first time in years, she felt like a door had quietly opened. A door leading to something bigger, warmer, and maybe, just maybe, something that looked a lot like true happiness. Part 7, a life-changing offer. 2 days after that warm evening, as the first hints of winter sunlight streamed through the window of Emma's tiny apartment, she was quietly preparing breakfast for her mother when the phone rang. On the other end was a deep, familiar voice, only this time it carried not politeness, but unmistakable sincerity. "I'd like to see you, if you have the time, not because of Lucas, but because of you." Emma hesitated. Between her packed work schedule, unpaid bills, and her mother's half-used box of medication, she didn't have much time or energy to spare. But somehow that invitation echoed in her heart like a soft calling, one she couldn't ignore. They met again at a small coffee shop, where old jazz tunes drifted quietly through the cozy air. Andrew was already there, wearing a dark brown wool coat, a worn leather notebook in his hands. He stood when she walked in. "Thank you for coming." After a few polite words, he opened the notebook. It wasn't a business proposal. It wasn't a contract. It was a handwritten note, neat, simple lines on plain paper. "Emma, I'm not good at expressing feelings, but over these past few days, you've helped me realize something. The most precious thing in life isn't wealth. It's the people who know how to soften our hearts." Emma didn't say anything. She just looked at him, quietly. Andrew went on, his voice steady, each word carefully chosen. "I know you're caring more than most people ever should, and I know you're not someone who easily accepts help. But this time, I hope you don't see it as pity. This is an offer, genuine and from the heart." He looked up, eyes unwavering. "I want to invite you to live with us. Not as a guest, but as family. I'd like to offer you a full-time position as Lucas's caregiver. It comes with a salary that can cover your mother's medical expenses. You'd have a home, stability, and more than anything, a place to belong." Emma was speechless. She never imagined that something as simple as a shared dinner, a few kind words to a little boy, would lead to something so life-altering. She shook her head, her voice trembling. I can't accept. I don't want to be a burden." Andrew smiled, his first real smile of relief. "Emma, you're not a burden. You're the one who brought light back into a house that had gone cold. And more than a job, this is a new beginning, for all of us." A single tear slipped quietly into the coffee cup in front of Emma. Not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. And in that moment, she understood. Sometimes life opens doors we never expected, but they lead us exactly where our hearts were meant to be. Just a few weeks after that life-changing conversation, Emma's world looked completely different. She and her mother moved into the small guest house behind Andrew's estate, not as tenants, but as family. Linda, Emma's mother, finally received treatment from some of the best doctors, no longer forced to grit her teeth through waves of pain when the painkillers ran out. And Emma, for the first time in years, she could finally breathe. But the most beautiful change of all was the bond between her and little Lucas. From those awkward early days, when Emma timidly asked how to care for him step by step, to cozy mornings filled with story time, music and laughter echoing through the room, something unbreakable had quietly taken root. Lucas was no longer the shy, withdrawn boy she first met. With Emma around, he blossomed. His eyes lit up every time she spoke, every time she gave him one of her unfiltered, heartfelt smiles. And Andrew, the man once consumed by million-dollar meetings, began to learn how to slow down. Each day he'd sit with Lucas and Emma for breakfast, listening to them share little stories from around the house, or simply sipping his coffee by the window where sunlight spilled through the young leaves. Then one late spring afternoon, the three of them were sitting under the large tree in the backyard. Lucas was playing in the sand, building small wooden models. Without warning, he looked up and said, "I want to make a place for kids like me, a place where everyone can laugh and feel loved, like I do with you and Dad." Emma and Andrew looked at each other. In that moment, their eyes held not just love for Lucas, but admiration for a boy who, despite everything, thought of others with such a wide and open heart. That idea didn't stay just an idea. Emma began planning. With Andrew's financial support and organizational experience, they built something together, a center called Little Light, a safe haven for children with disabilities, especially those with no one to care for them. There, they would be treated, educated, loved, and most of all, allowed to live like any child should. Emma became the heart of the center, not only because of her kindness, but because she understood deeply what those children faced. She had seen it, felt it, and overcome it herself. Lucas was there every week. He played with the other kids, told jokes, and even painted the artwork that hung at the center's entrance. A simple but touching drawing of a small yellow-roofed house where people held hands under the sun. Andrew never said much. He simply stood in the background, quietly supporting every step, like a father, a partner, and a man who had finally learned that true wealth isn't measured in spreadsheets, but in the grateful eyes of children given a second chance. Years later, at a small wedding in that same old garden, its leaves bathed in the golden glow of dusk, Lucas, now a young man, stood up and gave a speech. "My father is a billionaire, but it was Miss Emma who made our family truly rich. Rich in kindness, in love, and in the belief that goodness still exists." The entire garden erupted in applause, and the hearts once broken, now healed, quietly joined in that moment, grateful for the little things that had changed their lives forever. As time passed, the peaceful villa on the outskirts of the city continued to greet each morning with soft sunlight and each evening with the warm glow of golden lights. There, the laughter of children still echoed through the little garden, a garden where the footsteps of Lucas, Emma, and Andrew had left marks that would never fade. The Little Light Center had since become a home to hundreds of children who were once forgotten. Each child carried a story, a scar, but also a spark of hope, because here they knew someone would sit beside them, take their hand through the pain, and smile gently, saying, "You are not alone." Emma, the woman who once lived only for her mother, now lived for countless small hearts. She wasn't just a caregiver, she was the first ray of light on the new path of many children's lives. And Andrew, the man who once believed success was measured in numbers, had come to understand that sometimes a single act of kindness can change someone's life, even your own. Lucas grew up surrounded by love, not the kind born from pity, but the kind built on presence, on respect, and on warm, wholehearted hugs. He still remembered that fateful afternoon years ago, when a kind waitress smiled at him and gently cut his food so he could eat, a simple gesture that reached the deepest corners of his heart. And maybe it was that very simplicity that made the miracle possible.